You know, we hear the word bombshell, and I think certainly it's true in this case.
Hi, congratulations. Thanks for taking the time out. I know you guys must be really, really busy, but
This blockbuster book, I've been reveling in your extracts. Very juicy stuff.
If there is one thing Tom Bauer has always mastered, it's patience. Not the polite kind, the dangerous kind. The kind where you don't speak until everyone else has already talked themselves into a corner. He doesn't fling accusations into the daylight and hope something sticks. He studies the room, he listens to the breathing. He waits until the air is thick until one spark could blow the whole thing sky high, and then only then he lights the match. This time the room was already soaked. The Sussex story had been stretched, patched, polished, and rehearsed for years. Smiles carefully placed, statements carefully worded, and beneath it all, that quiet, uncomfortable tension people feel when something just doesn't quite add up. Tom didn't create that tension, he stepped into it, and when he finally spoke, it didn't land like a whisper, it landed like a collapse. Because according to this account, he didn't just graze a nerve, he shattered the floor beneath Prince Harry's feet. The moment Bauer hinted that he was holding material powerful enough to detonate the entire Sussex narrative in one clean blow, Harry didn't react like a man confident in the truth. He reacted like someone trapped. Within hours, the panic spread. Legal threats fired off. Messages passed through intermediaries. Journalists quietly warned, sue them, silence them, shut it down. That reaction alone told its own story. Because people who know they're standing on solid ground don't scramble like that. They don't lash out in all directions. They don't try to smother smoke before there's even visible fire. But Tom didn't blink.
Up in California to spread wellness and love and sincerity have done the exact opposite. They have dumped on their family, dumped on...
Didn't raise his voice, he didn't backtrack. Instead, he calmly signaled something far more unsettling than gossip. Evidence, not vibes, not anonymous chatter, not internet rumors, documents, records, timelines, witnesses, the kind of material that doesn't need defending because it speaks without emotion. And then he said the word that changed everything. Paternity. That's when the ground truly shifted, because questioning the legitimacy of a royal child isn't tabloid sport. It's existential. It hits bloodlines, titles, inheritance, the one thing the monarchy cannot afford uncertainty over. And suddenly, this wasn't about hurt feelings or bad press. It was about identity itself. Harry's reaction, according to this account, was immediate and volcanic. Phones thrown, doors slammed, advisors frozen out, lawsuits demanded, injunctions discussed, retractions screamed for. But behind the rage wasn't confidence. It was panic. Because if this were nonsense, if it were pure fabrication, there was one clean solution, one nuclear option, a DNA test, end of story. And yet, no one offered it. What Tom claimed next was even more surgical. He said the information he was preparing to release tied directly to secret pregnancy records, unexplained travel anomalies, and an early connection between Meghan Markle and a Colombian businessman whose name had never entered mainstream coverage until now. And the internet, already restless, went feral. Flight logs resurfaced.
He interviewed more than 80 sources for the unofficial biography, but
Charity trips were re-examined. Dates were circled and recircled. Screenshots dug up from digital graves. Slowly, uncomfortably, a pattern began to form. Whether true or not, it looked coherent enough to frighten people. Then came the witness. Not a shadow, not a distorted voice. A man the public already knew. A man written out of the fairy tale like an inconvenient footnote. Trevor Engelson, Meghan's first husband, silent for over a decade, until Tom Bauer put him on the record. Before Trevor even spoke, the internet detonated again. At exactly 12:40 a.m., West Coast time, when gossip spreads fastest and defenses are weakest, an anonymous X account appeared. No history, no profile photo, one post, one image, one sentence. Everyone thinks they know nothing at all. The photograph made people uncomfortable. Meghan Markle in a luxury hotel hallway, her body angled toward a man who was very clearly not Prince Harry. The lighting warm, the space private, the moment unguarded. His arm around her waist in a way that crossed from friendly into familiar. The build was wrong, the posture wrong, and then the detail that broke it open. A leather bracelet with a metal cross pendant, matched within minutes to a Colombian businessman spotted briefly in promotional footage months earlier. The image went viral before it could even be questioned. Zoomed, enhanced, compared, frames matched. Jewelry aligned. This man wasn't tall and lanky. He was solid, athletic, confident in a way that didn't read royal at all. More money than titles, more power than protocol. And then just as suddenly the account vanished, scrubbed, clean, too clean. But screenshots don't disappear. Right on cue, Tom stepped forward. One short post, no emojis, no hysteria. Some stories don't disappear when you delete them. They disappear when the truth is proven. This one hasn't been. And then the sentence that froze everything. The firstborn child may not belong to the man the public believes. No names, no accusations, just implications sharp enough to cut glass. Hours later came the announcement, a new podcast series, weekly episodes, documents, witnesses, exposure, not spectacle. Harry's camp responded with noise, denials, threats, fury. But noise doesn't extinguish fire. It feeds it. And still, No DNA test. Episode 1 dropped late on a Friday night. Tom's voice was calm, methodical, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. He spoke of documents linked directly to Archie's birth, medical inconsistencies, gaps in reporting, sealed details that deviated sharply from royal precedent. No hospital confirmations, no named doctors, no timestamps, just vague statements and controlled appearances. Then he rewound the story. 2 weeks earlier, a private California villa, phones banned, tech billionaires, Hollywood royalty, a host with access to private jets like most people have Uber, a jet loan, a charity trip to Colombia, and something left behind, a leather briefcase. Inside, according to Tom, a high-resolution print of that same hotel hallway image, clearer, closer, undeniable. And that's when it stopped feeling like gossip, because now it was about what people were willing to hide and why. As Harry listened, something shifted. Not anger this time, fear. Because if Tom was willing to release this much just to provoke a reaction, what was he still holding back? And why was no one on the Sussex side reaching for the one piece of proof that could end it all? Episode 2 changed the tone entirely. No music, no build-up, just Tom clearing his throat. Tonight, I'm not speaking to an anonymous source, I'm speaking to a man who lived this. And then Trevor Engelson's voice filled the feed. Tired, flat, heavy, the sound of someone who had watched the world celebrate a story he knew wasn't clean. Trevor didn't start with accusations, he started with context, the marriage, the ambition. The shift once doors began opening. Late nights, international contacts, growing secrecy, then the night, the hotel, the hallway, the smell of coffee and disinfectant, the elevator doors closing behind him, a man exiting a room she'd claimed she was alone in, confident, unbothered, belonging there. Trevor said Meghan didn't deny it. She reframed it. Networking, opportunity, something he wouldn't understand because he didn't think big enough. Strategic, not emotional. And then the line that made people sit upright. She told me this was the kind of man who changes lives. The internet exploded. Clips everywhere. Reactions stitched and restitched. One question drowned out all others. If this is all lies, why not end it instantly? Behind closed doors, Harry was unraveling. Voice shaking on calls, temper snapping, watching comment sections he swore he avoided. The worst part wasn't Trevor's story, it was the timelines. Dates lined up with brutal precision, individually explainable. Together, devastating. When Harry finally asked the question out loud, the room went cold. Why won't you just do the test? Meghan didn't cry, she didn't scream. She went still, and then she turned it on him. Betrayal, siding with them, the royals, the media, Tom Bauer, anyone but her. This isn't about them, Harry shouted back. This is about me not knowing if my son is actually mine. When she said, if you force this, you destroy us. Something broke that couldn't be repaired. Outside, the noise grew louder. Palace staffers whispered, documentation questioned, silence from Buckingham Palace spoke volumes. By the time episode 3 was teased, the question had changed. Not is this true, but what are they hiding? And inside a mansion built on curated narratives, Prince Harry sat alone, realizing something terrifying. That once doubt takes root, it doesn't need proof to destroy everything. And that doubt didn't arrive quietly. It crept in, settling into the cracks of moments Harry had once brushed off as stress, media pressure, paranoia planted by people he was taught to distrust. Suddenly, every memory replayed itself with sharper edges. Conversations that had felt rehearsed, decisions that were made too quickly, explanations that always seemed airtight until you stared at them a second too long. He began remembering how carefully everything around Archie's arrival had been managed. Who spoke, who didn't, what was shown, what was never allowed to linger. According to this account, Harry started doing something he'd rarely done before. He stopped reacting and started listening, not to advisors, not to statements drafted by lawyers, to silence. And the silence was deafening, because the more noise his camp made publicly, the quieter things became where it actually mattered. No doctors stepping forward, no clean timelines released, no simple, definitive proof offered. Just outrage, victimhood, and accusations of persecution. And outrage is not evidence, it's a shield. The internet didn't slow down, it never does. People began pulling archived interviews, old speeches, casual remarks that once sounded harmless, lines about privacy, about control, about boundaries. When placed next to the gaps Tom Bauer had highlighted, those words didn't feel principled anymore. They felt defensive. Reaction videos piled up, not just from critics, but from people who once defended them fiercely. And that shift mattered. When believers hesitate, the story changes shape. Harry, according to this telling, became obsessed with one thing: certainty. Not public certainty, not legal certainty, personal certainty, the kind that lets you sleep, the kind that anchors your identity. And that was the cruel irony. The man who had burned bridges with his family in the name of truth and freedom now found himself unable to access the one truth that mattered most to him. Because the moment he pushed for it, everything threatened to collapse. Meghan, in this narrative, didn't soften. She tightened. Conversations became strategic again, words chosen carefully, emotions deployed precisely. She reminded him of enemies, of narratives, of how the world devours women who don't play along. And maybe all of that was true, maybe some of it was even justified, but it didn't answer the question. It never answered the question. The public sensed it too, that absence, that refusal, because innocent people don't fear verification. Tom Bower didn't need to repeat it anymore. Others did it for him, quietly, relentlessly. Every time the Sussex camp issued another furious denial without substance, the doubt deepened. Every time a spokesperson spoke about boundaries instead of facts, belief hardened. And belief is dangerous. Belief doesn't wait for courts. It doesn't care about defamation laws. It spreads through feeling, through pattern recognition, through that gut-level instinct that whispers something isn't right. Once it takes hold, it doesn't matter whether the truth eventually exonerates or condemns. Damage is already done. Inside that California mansion, surrounded by sunshine and luxury, Harry reportedly felt smaller than he ever had in palace corridors. Because there, at least, the rules were clear. Here, everything was emotional, personal, entangled. The rebellion he had built his identity around began to look less like freedom and more like a leap taken without checking where he'd land. The most devastating part wasn't even the possibility that the rumors were true. It was the realization that he might never know. That the truth, whatever it was, had become a bargaining chip instead of a given. That certainty had a price, and the price might be his marriage, his public image, his carefully constructed life. And so the world waited, not breathlessly, grimly, waiting for the one thing that could end the nightmare in seconds. Or confirm it forever, because modern fairy tales don't shatter all at once. They bleed out slowly, one unanswered question at a time. And this one was hemorrhaging. This